If there is anything to take away from the overwhelming number of medical shows on TV, it's that there are countless things that can go wrong with the human body. That and doctors are all very attractive and horny people, but only one of these has plagued mankind's mind for millennia. It's been thousands of years since humanity has embarked on the quest to cure all ills, but despite living in the most medically advanced period in history, we still face a multitude of diseases with no known cure. This gap between what our medicine is currently capable of and the diseases that it can't handle understandably creates a sense of fear and uncertainty. We can mitigate these feelings by convincing ourselves that not only are all cures possible, but perhaps already out there, hidden by secrecy or mystical forces. This willingness to believe can have negative consequences, making us more susceptible to fake cures which have no medical value. A historical example would be snake oil, a 19th century fraudulent cure-all. I mean, the poster literally claimed it was good for everything, but despite having zero medical benefits, it would successfully sell for 2.5 decades before it was eventually revealed to contain no snake oil whatsoever, just pepper and more beef than a McDonald's quarter pounder. The reason it survived for so long was partially because it offered a solution, albeit a completely wrong one, to problems which had none. Dr. Kang, the author of Quackery, A Brief History of the Worst Ways to Cure Everything, argues that as long as that gap is going to be there is going to be quackery and there is going to be snake oil. But I would take Dr. Kang's statement one step further and say the same uncertainty and fear which makes us believe in fraudulent cures in this world manifests in our imaginary ones, where our desires transform into the existence of magic healing spells and potions that do the impossible. As long as disease continues to ravage our world, our fictional ones will remain full of cures. Since there has always been a limit to what we can cure, it's no surprise that healing magic has appeared in fiction since the very beginning. The oldest story ever recorded, the Epic of Gilgamesh, tells the tale of a hero seeking a flower that could rejuvenate and restore youth. In the thousands of years since, stories involving magical healing have continued to evolve, each introducing new magic systems and explanations, many of which describe the existence of a panacea, a magical treatment that could cure anything, named after the Greek goddess of cures herself. However, in modern times especially, we often take these ideas for granted. Healing magic has become a common trope, frequently reduced to a gameplay mechanic or a quick way to get characters back into the action. The how and why it works are often glossed over, with the spell's effectiveness only demonstrated by how brightly it shines when cast. And while sparkling is clearly the best way to show something is magical, this time I'm looking for something deeper. How exactly would healing magic work? What are its limits, and what are the darker consequences it might carry? Even in our wildest fantasies, can a true panacea exist, or will there only be snake oil? In this video, we'll explore 3 possible types of healing magic and push them to their limits. Before we begin, let's go over how we'll grade each type of healing magic. We'll be evaluating them based on their ability to treat 4 types of illnesses. The first is traumatic injuries. I'm not talking about psychological trauma, like walking in on your parents having sex. I mean the far less painful physical kind, such as being in a car crash or having your arms cut off. Next, we'll look at infections, whether caused by bacteria or viruses. Third is toxins, because lots of people have been mysteriously poisoned these days. Finally, we'll examine various other diseases that don't fall into the previous categories. I'll also introduce 2 overarching categories, one for ease of use for the healer, essentially how much medical knowledge is required to use this magic effectively, and the other for unintended side effects. Now that we've got that sorted out, let's dive in. The best way to heal an injury is to simply avoid getting injured in the first place. While that's the last thing you want to hear from your doctor in the emergency room, there is a type of healing magic that makes this advice actually useful. This form of magic turns back time on the body, restoring it to a previously healthy state. You can think of it as reloading a save file in a video game, returning to a moment before you made that mistake. This is the interpretation we'll use to avoid any complications with wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. Overall, this is the strongest form of healing magic when it comes to treating traumatic, life-threatening injuries, as even the most fatal wounds can be quickly undone, leaving no trace. Even better, there should be no negative side effects for the patient, as things just went back to usual. This method is even easy for the healer, as they don't need any in-depth medical knowledge to just hit the rewind button. Before we go any further, we need to address a few key questions. The first is, how much time can be turned back? For the sake of simplicity, let's just say there is no fixed limit. However, the further you want to go back, the harder it becomes and the more talent is required. The more important question, though, is whether the treatment can be localized to a specific part of the body, or if the whole body itself reverts. This matters because memories are physically stored in the brain, and restoring the entire body to a previous state would essentially erase all memories gained since then. A holistic treatment would then be problematic in battle, since that's a place you typically want to be aware of what's happening around you. But let's say the fight just ended, and things have calmed down, but you lost a leg. The difference between the 2 methods is minimal for recent injuries, as for getting a few hours is a small price to pay for regaining both legs. However, let's say that you lost your leg when you were 5 years old. Now, depending on the type of reversion, you either have a 30-year-old man with a child's leg, like a time paradox Frankenstein, or 25 years of life erased, leaving behind a perfectly normal 5-year-old kid. In this type of healing magic, timing is everything. The longer the gap between the injury and the healing, the greater the potential for unintended effects. That said, both cases could still be seen as successful treatments, but that's where this method's specialty ends. Fundamentally, this isn't true healing magic, but time reversal magic. And if there's a second thing movies and television have taught me, it's that going back in time can't solve everything.
Great Scott.
For traumatic injuries, once you reset, you can just avoid the harming incident. But what about genetic disorders or predispositions? Disorders you are born with are completely untreatable, as there is no healthy state to return to. Diseases that develop after birth, like cancer or type 1 diabetes, don't fare much better. Some cancers take decades to become evident, and a complete cure would then require reverting an organ back decades, and then praying that the cancer itself would not develop again. However, many factors that increase the risk of cancer are beyond one's control. The fact that the patient developed cancer in the first place means they're likely to develop it again. While a full cure may be unlikely, it doesn't mean it wouldn't be treatable. Since many cancers begin forming in adulthood, the difference between the organ states wouldn't be that drastic. And since most cancers are localized until later stages, this means a possible treatment plan could involve periodic resets of the cancerous tissues to an earlier, symptom-free state, effectively delaying or preventing its development. A good example of this is in Disastrous Life of Psyche K, where Psyche's classmate is suffering from severe stomach pains, and Psyche rewinds his stomach by 24 hours in order to avoid interruptions on his school trip. He keeps this up until the trip is over, and he won't be bothered by this medical emergency, but ideally, you'd have a more caring medical provider. While this isn't a true cure, it's not entirely powerless either. However, this is the best case scenario for diseases treated with this type of magic. If the disease affects the entire body, the treatment would quickly become an Adam Sandler movie. And if the disease developed during childhood, there would be little hope. Take type 1 diabetes, for example. This autoimmune disease causes the body's immune system to attack the pancreas, preventing it from producing insulin. It is most commonly developed between the ages of 4 to 6, meaning that the only option would be to revert to an intact pancreas of a toddler. Unsurprisingly, the child's pancreas would likely struggle to keep up with an adult's body, and the pancreatic cells themselves even need time to mature, so diabetic symptoms would likely still persist. In cases like this, the magic wouldn't even be able to delay the disease's effects. This is also the first instance where real-world modern medicine has an unequivocally better treatment than literal magic, so kudos to us. So far, if we were grading this kind of magic, I'd give it an A for traumatic injuries and a C for diseases. I'd also give it an A for toxins, as it would essentially be the same as the traumatic injuries. But what about your average cold and flu? In the case of viral or bacterial infections, this healing magic might do more harm than good. When your body successfully fights off an infection, it strengthens its immune system to prevent the same or similar pathogens from infecting you again. With this magic, the only cure would be to restore your body to its pre-infection state, effectively denying your immune system the chance to build its defenses. While this may offer immediate relief, it would hurt you in the long run. That's why it should only be used if the patient is at risk of losing their life or suffering permanent damage from the infection. Otherwise, using it as the go-to treatment for every cold would risk creating an immune-compromised society that couldn't function without it. Thankfully, there is no world, real or fictional, where medical providers would provide short-sighted treatments to make the patients happy in the moment, but ultimately threaten the health of the entire population. That would be crazy. So I would grade this a solid B, as it is fantastic when used appropriately. But we can further expand on this idea by generalizing it to saying that Kelly Clarkson was absolutely right when she said what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That idea stands in direct opposition with this restoration magic. The body often needs to endure a temporary form of suffering in order to reach a better, stronger state. A more everyday example of this is exercise, where your muscles tear, heal, and rebuild stronger over the course of a few days. Using this magic to heal yourself would give you back some energy and relieve soreness, but it would undo all the hard work you've put in. This certainly would be the wrong way to use healing magic.
He said it! He said it!
Overall, I would grade this type of healing magic as quite effective, though certainly not a cure-all. It earns bonus points for requiring minimal medical knowledge to use effectively, and for having negligible side effects. The most significant potential side effect would be memory wiping, though in the right hands, that might be more of a feature than a bug. Another possible risk is that the magic could rewind the body too much, potentially even erasing the person from existence, similar to Ares' power in My Hero Academia. However, as long as the individual still has a body, our next form of healing magic could restore them to the proper age. While our first form of healing magic focuses on the body's past to find a solution, this one looks towards its future. The body already has an incredible ability to heal itself. and this form of magic accelerates those natural processes to make recovery instantaneous. Essentially, it boosts the target's vitality. But what are its limits? In order to discuss that, we need to understand a bit more biology than simply knowing the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Let's start with a simple example, healing a cut. It's a process I go through pretty often because I have cats. Wound healing occurs in 4 stages, the first being homeostasis, which literally means to stop bleeding. In order to keep your insides, well, inside, your blood vessels constrict, limiting the blood flow to the area. This is similar to turning off the water supply before trying to fix a broken pipe. Once blood flow is reduced, platelets activate and bind to the exposed area. They are joined by red blood cells and fibrin to form a clot, which eventually dries into what we commonly call a scab. After a few minutes, with the temporary stopgate in place, the blood vessels not only reopen, but actually expand beyond their normal size. This surge in blood flow causes the injured area to become red, swollen, and warmer, which is why we call it inflammation, because all flames are red, hot, and swole. The increased blood flow serves several purposes. It delivers essential nutrients and oxygen to the area and sends white blood cells to the scene. White blood cells act as the cleanup crew, arriving to eliminate any invaders that entered when the body's defenses were breached. They also clear away debris and damaged or dead cells, setting the stage for future healing. If we continue our HGTV analogy, they're the demolition crew, clearing the space before renovations begin. This stage lasts about 3 days, and once it's complete, the body moves to the proliferation stage, where rebuilding actually begins. To start rebuilding our bodies, we create a fibrous matrix made out of collagen to act as a scaffold on which other cells can build. This construction analogy isn't even mine, so you can't even blame me this time. On this scaffold, cells divide and replicate to fill the gap, new blood vessels form, and the wound is permanently closed. For superficial or minor cuts, the cells can fill the gap entirely through replication. However, for deeper wounds, the gap is filled with more collagen, as it forms faster and creates a quicker, more durable barrier. This collagen-rich tissue doesn't function or look the same as the original cells it replaced, and it's what we call scar tissue. This process can take up to 3 weeks to complete, but the healing isn't finished yet. The final phase is maturation or remodeling, during which the tissue is reorganized to become more functional and the collagen is strengthened. This phase takes weeks or even years to finish, and in the end, the newly formed tissue can only regain up to 80% of its original strength. Now that we've explained the process in detail, how would speeding this up be any helpful? In the US, injury was the 3rd leading cause of death overall, and the leading cause of death among those aged 1 to 44 years. Of those deaths, up to 40% are due to bleeding out, and half of those occur before the patient can even reach the hospital. By accelerating the healing process, blood can clot and skin can regenerate before the fatal blood loss occurs, potentially saving millions of lives each year. For traumatic injuries, the most incredible aspect of this healing magic is its life-saving speed. However, at the end of the day, it is still bound by the limits of our body's natural healing abilities. For starters, humans can't heal everything. If we lose an arm, we can heal the wound, but we can't regrow the appendage. Lizards, for example, can regrow their tails, but humans aren't reptiles. At least most of us believe that. Even if we can regenerate the tissue, it's typically done with fibrin, or scar tissue, which, as mentioned earlier, doesn't match the strength or functionality of the original tissue. This is most detrimental in internal organs like the heart, lungs, kidney, and liver. Scar tissue is too rigid compared to the heart's original tissue, impairing its ability to pump, while its thickness reduces the lungs' efficiency in absorbing oxygen. As we age, the natural wear and tear on our organs leads to scar tissue formation as a form of repair. But over time, the accumulated scar tissue impairs the organ function, resulting in a disease known as fibrosis. As fibrosis progresses, it can lead to complete organ failure. It is estimated that severe fibrosis is responsible for up to 45% of all deaths worldwide. Essentially, traumatic injuries to the organs can never fully recover. While this magic might allow you to survive a sword through the chest, the efficiency of the injured organs and their overall lifespan will permanently decline, potentially leading to your death later on. To sum it up, Nietzsche was absolutely wrong when he said, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." There are 2 examples in fiction I think demonstrate the limitations of this healing magic pretty well. The first is from My Hero Academia, where Deku initially struggles with controlling his super strength, often destroying his arms when using it. Although Recovery Girl heals him each time, her power simply accelerates the body's natural healing rate. After repeatedly breaking his arms and having her heal them, the damage accumulated to the point where even her abilities couldn't fully restore them. Another example comes from the Korean manhwa Doctor Player, where a character suffers a dislocated shoulder. Raising someone's vitality and increasing their healing factor won't physically reinsert the arm bone into the shoulder socket. This can be easily done manually with proper technique and medical knowledge, but this healing magic can't replace that expertise. While it can accelerate recovery, the treatments themselves may still require a knowledgeable doctor. Going back to our example of a broken arm, instantly healing the bone might result in a newly reformed arm that is unusable. To heal properly, the bone needs to be set in the correct position and kept stable during the healing process. A cast or splint is applied to maintain proper alignment and prevent a malunion fracture, where the bone heals incorrectly. Using this magic might eliminate the need for a cast, but the initial setting of the bone becomes even more critical, as there would be no chance for correction once the spell is cast. Overall, for traumatic injuries, I would give Accelerating Vitality a B. While it doesn't offer a perfect recovery, its ability to perform life-saving wound closure and first aid truly makes it magical. Additionally, even non-life-threatening injuries can benefit from the removal of recovery time. The real question is, should you use it when it's not absolutely necessary? To answer that, we need to explore the potential side effects. What unintended consequences arise from speeding up the healing process? When we went over how a wound heals, there wasn't any clear way to speed up the process. We could try the Amazon method and make them pee in a bottle, but cells don't have bladders or bottles. The cells are always working, and their processes are highly complicated and interdependent. So let's leave the how it happens to be explained away by magic. Whether it's because you speed up time for the body or make the cells work faster, the end result is that the cells must have replicated, and this is where we encounter our first side effect. Cells don't have proper ages. We can add calendars to the list of things they don't have. Instead, their age is determined by how many times they've divided. This is called the mitotic clock. As Dr. Schultz, the beauty company, not the Django character, explains in this actual article, cells can typically divide only 40 to 60 times before dying. This is called the Hayflick limit, and it is explained by the existence of telomeres. Telomeres are essentially junk DNA located at the end of our chromosomes. While they don't contain vital genetic information, they play a crucial role in protecting our important genes. The best explanation of telomeres I've heard is that they're like aglets, and I know what those are from Phineas and Ferb. For those who don't watch quality television, aglets are the small plastic tips at the ends of your shoelaces, and they keep them from fraying and deteriorating. In a similar way, telomeres keep your genetic information stable. However, each time a cell divides, a small portion of the telomere gets cut off. After 40 to 60 divisions, there's no telomere left. When this happens, the cell should stop dividing in a process called senescence, and then kill itself through apoptosis. This is the happy ending. If the cell continued dividing past this point, it would begin cutting off vital genetic information, potentially leading to dangerous mutations like cancer. But what happens when all our cells hit their Hayflick limit? Well, Dr. Schultz reassures us that this doesn't apply to stem cells, which can divide and create fresh new specialized skin cells throughout our entire life. So even if we exfoliate, our skin will still be there in the morning. However, Dr. Schultz is wrong. Not about waking up with no skin, which would be horrifying, but about stem cells being able to generate new cells for our entire lifetime. This is why you shouldn't trust medical information from beauty companies, only television. Stem cells produce an enzyme called telomerase, often referred to as the immortality enzyme, because it regenerates telomeres. In theory, this could allow them to divide forever. However, stem cells do not have sufficient telomerase activity to maintain telomere length over time, so their mitotic clocks still tick, just at a slower rate. This telomere attrition in stem cells and their niche cells can result in the exhaustion of the regenerative potential of high turnover organs, causing or contributing to the onset of age-related diseases. Some diseases related to shortening telomeres include premature graying, an increased chance of cancer, vulnerability to infections, progressive bone marrow failure, heart disease, dementia, cognitive impairment, and even premature death in adults. It's easy to see why telomere shortening is seen as a key contributor to an organism's aging. In summary, using this healing magic will cause cells to rapidly divide to replace damaged or missing cells, and those cells will hit their limits and need to be replaced by stem cell division. The telomeres of all cells will shorten faster than the normal rate, causing them to age significantly faster. For example, a broken arm typically takes 12 weeks to heal. By accelerating the healing process, the arm might heal instantly, but it would potentially be 12 weeks older. While this might be fine a few times throughout one's life, repeated overuse could have serious long-term consequences. Even ignoring cellular aging, cellular division is inherently risky. When your cell's genes replicate to form an identical copy of genetic information, each of those base cells has an intrinsic mutation rate of about 0.003%. While this might seem small, each cell division involves replicating 3 billion base pairs, and with around 10 trillion cells in the body, that means if all cells divide just once, we are looking at about 948 quadrillion mutations, any of which could be cancerous. Thankfully, our body is incredibly effective at detecting and eliminating these dangerous cells, keeping our lifetime risk of cancer to just 40%, which after seeing those numbers, it's perhaps surprising that it is not higher. So, when comparing cancer rates between people who have used this healing magic and thus undergone more cell divisions than normal, we can expect them to have a higher likelihood of developing cancer. It's solely a numbers game. For these reasons, this healing magic should only be used on the injured part of the body and only when necessary, as limiting the number of cells directly reduces these after effects. In practice, this means that it would be inadvisable to drink healing potions, allowing their effects to spread throughout the entire body. Instead, they should be applied directly to the injured area. While everything we've discussed so far is a guaranteed consequence, we can speculate further. What if whatever causes your cells to divide quickly doesn't stop once the healing spell ceases? What if the cells continue to grow, despite there being no wound left to heal? That, in itself, could fit the definition of cancer, which is when a body's cells grow uncontrollably and start to spread. This would make your standard health potions certified carcinogens, up there with smoking and sunlight. This form of healing magic could be seen as a form of beneficial cancer, which offers an interesting perspective on characters like Deadpool. His powers essentially turned his cancer into the superpowered version of it. But the final side effect I will mention may be the worst of them all. The rapid cell growth, if spread throughout your body, would also cause your hair and nails to grow at an accelerated rate. Sure, your internal bleeding might stop, but now you need to pay for another $40 haircut. That's how they get you. With all this in mind, I'd have to rate the unintended side effects as a solid C+. Are there possible diseases you could cure to make it worth these risks? Your body has the ability to heal itself by addressing irregularities, but what happens when your body doesn't recognize the disease as an irregularity? Genetic and chronic diseases are deeply embedded in your body's blueprint. They are part of the plan your body follows in building and maintaining itself. When a disease is tied to these underlying genetic instructions or long-standing conditions, the body may not even perceive it as something that needs fixing. In these cases, healing magic would struggle because it can only address what the body recognizes as a problem. For example, if a disease is caused by something like a hormonal imbalance, healing magic might offer temporary relief by accelerating the function of the affected organ, increasing hormone production. However, once the magic fades, the imbalance would return, as the body's normal state is defined by that imbalance. Without a permanent cure, continuing to use this magic could end up exacerbating the problem in the long run, especially if it leads to the aforementioned side effects like premature cellular aging or tissue damage. But just because your body is aware of a problem doesn't mean it has the ability to fix it on its own. Some issues require external intervention or physical treatment. A good example of this is cholecystitis, an inflammation of the gallbladder caused by gallstones blocking the bile duct. This is a life-threatening condition that cannot be resolved by the body's natural healing processes alone. The only solution is typically a surgery to physically remove the blockage. Healing magic would have absolutely no effect on this situation, as the issue requires a physical removal of the obstruction, something this magic alone cannot replicate. However, there are cases where this magic could potentially provide relief in certain situations. For example, in asthma attacks, accelerating the function of the adrenal glands could mimic the action of an epinephrine injection, helping to dilate the airways and reduce symptoms. But even in these cases, proper diagnosis and understanding of the condition are crucial. Improper use of the magic could either fail to help or worsen the situation, potentially causing the patient's condition to spiral. Healing magic would also not be effective and could even be harmful in cases like cancer. Cancer cells are notorious for their rapid and unchecked growth. Accelerating the healing process would inadvertently speed up the already fast division of cancer cells, worsening the disease. Similarly, in conditions where the body is already causing damage to itself, such as autoimmune diseases or allergic reactions, boosting the body's overactive responses could be disastrous. In the case of allergic reactions, using this magic could enhance the body's inflammatory response to allergens, increasing the risk of anaphylactic shock, which could become fatal. Given these considerations, it's clear that this kind of healing magic would be highly limited or even harmful, which is why it earns a D in this category. Moving on, there are a few ways to approach this problem. One option is to accelerate all cellular activity in the body, both your own and that of the foreign pathogens. This would essentially fast forward the microscopic war inside your body. While this might help you feel better faster, it wouldn't actually improve your chances of survival. In fact, infections with high mortality rates wouldn't benefit from this at all. Now, let's just say you adjust the magic to only affect your own cells. This brings us to another challenge. What exactly counts as your cells? In a healthy human body, you have about 30 trillion human cells. However, these cells work alongside a diverse group of good bacteria that form your microbiome, which is essential for numerous biological functions. These beneficial bacteria in your body add up to about 38 trillion cells, meaning they actually outnumber your human cells, making up about 56% of the cells in your body. Since these bacteria are biologically independent from you and don't share your genome, speeding up your human cells while leaving your microbiome unaffected could disrupt the delicate balance between them, leading to a condition called dysbiosis, which could cause significant health issues. On the viral side, viruses hijack our cells in order to replicate. Speeding up just our own cellular activity, the viruses would still benefit from the quicker cell replication, meaning our chances of fighting them off wouldn't increase as much. Our best bet would be to limit the magic effects to enhance the speed and production of our immune system alone. This would reduce the recovery time and increase survival rates of many pathogens. However, our immune system isn't perfect. Many bacteria and viruses can easily evade it, especially those that target our immune cells in the first place. We would just be increasing the effectiveness of our immune system, so pathogens that avoid it in the first place would go unchanged. Whether they be single-celled invaders or larger parasites like tapeworms or brainworms, there are plenty of infectious diseases our immune system can't truly fight alone. Overall, I would give this magic a B for infectious diseases, as it can help in many cases and lower mortality rates, but has a limited scope. Let's hope it can still be useful like this for our next category. Toxins. Our liver is great at filtering toxins out of the body. It's something you personally experience every time you drink alcohol. But that's not the only poison your body can break down or metabolize into harmless byproducts. Your liver can naturally filter out some of the deadliest poisons, such as mercury, arsenic, or cyanide, but it does so in very small amounts that can easily get overwhelmed by significant doses. Just like Captain America can no longer get drunk due to his metabolism being 4 times higher than normal, this magic could quickly help the body purge poisons before lethal levels are reached. However, the poisons can still cause permanent, irreversible damage to the body before they can be filtered out. So unless you have a constantly superpowered metabolism or a healer on call, poisoning will still be hazardous. Once again, there are further limits to this, as there are many poisons that the human body is incapable of filtering to any level. This could be because the poisons target the filtering organs in particular, similar to how pathogens targeting our immune system can't be beaten by it alone, or that the poison cannot be broken down in general, like tetrodotoxin in pufferfish. For these reasons, I'd once again give it a B, as it can save lives from a large amount of toxins if applied in a timely manner. Overall, this is what our grades look like for healing magic using the idea of accelerated vitality. The final thing to note is the ease of use category, which is a C. As to use it in a safe or effective manner, you would truly need the same amount of medical knowledge as a doctor. So far, none of the methods we've explored have been able to solve every problem. This is mainly because the past 2 approaches only help the body return to what it considers normal, even if that baseline is fundamentally flawed. But what if you could go a step further and manually override our genetics, individually controlling each cell? This could allow us to quickly regrow lost limbs without scarring, reverse the aging process, and regenerate organs. We could cure genetic diseases by correcting the faulty blueprints they follow, or even alter the immune system to fight threats like cancer that it normally ignores. We could accelerate metabolic rates to break down poisons faster, and even in more extreme cases, change the biology of our cells so that the previously lethal toxins no longer have any effect. While these ideas may seem fantastical, many of them are already within reach thanks to current advances in gene editing. We could even go beyond just restoring health and actually enhance ourselves, becoming stronger, smarter, or more attractive. In more magical realms, with even more powerful methods, you could give yourself super strength, instantly eliminate life, change your appearance, or even alter memories. Pretty much everything that happens in Redo of a Healer except the sex crimes. Which brings us to the topic of ethical concerns. Gene editing could inevitably shift the focus toward valuing genetic traits over the individual as a whole, leading to a system of eugenics. This could even extend to pre-birth decisions, where parents select traits they desire in their children, essentially creating designer babies. But is it truly right for us to make such decisions? Healers would truly be playing God, but I guess it's okay since they're usually clerics. Even in our world, these are conversations we are actively debating at this very moment as our science progresses. Another concern is far more objective. Changing the genome could have unforeseen effects. Editing a gene may solve one problem, but it could also create several new ones, leading to harmful mutations, diseases, or unintended side effects. Even more troubling, edits to germline cells, the DNA passed on to our children, could result in generational mutations, potentially even giving rise to an entirely new human species. This might explain the existence of so many different races in fantasy worlds where healing magic is present. So, is editing our genome worth the risk? While our current genes may seem to have limitations, they were shaped over millions of years of evolution for specific reasons. For example, you might be frustrated that you can't regrow a lost arm. After all, you grew arms once before when you were an embryo, so why can't you do it again? The answer comes down to a difference in stem cells. Embryonic stem cells are pluripotent, meaning they can differentiate, transform into, any type of cell in the body, which is why they're so valuable for research. On the other hand, adult stem cells are multipotent, meaning they can only differentiate into a limited range of cells. Essentially, when stem cells are young, they can grow up to be anything, but as they get older, reality beats them down, and they eventually settle on a handful of practical fields. It's for this reason that we call them stem cells. But is there a valid reason for this? Besides making the 2011 film Soul Surfer, pluripotent cells are inherently less stable than their fixed, differentiated counterparts. Their ability to transform into any type of cell makes them genetically fragile, and this pluripotency is linked to an increased risk of developing severe cancers. It seems that our stem cells actually restrict their own potential as a form of protection. The reason that not all cells produce telomerase and age as slowly as stem cells is related to a similar concern. Cancer and stem cells share a certain amount of features, such as being able to divide endlessly. This is what makes stem cells prime candidates to become cancer, as they would need less mutations to become hazardous. And as mentioned before, mutations are a numbers game, so your body lowers the amount of cells capable of producing telomerase in order to make it less likely. Biology seems to believe a small group of immortals watching over the majority of the population is the best way to go. Rotten Tomatoes disagrees. The main point here is that genetics are incredibly complex. In order to do no harm when editing genes, you would need to thoroughly understand the gene itself and all of its possible interactions. Only then could you confidently use it as treatment. This makes the process far from simple. In fact, the ease of use is essentially infinitely difficult, resulting in a scenario where there are infinite potential solutions, each with an equal number of potential problems. So, is there such a thing as a panacea? No. Anyone who says differently is selling something. The idea of a universal cure for ailments remains a myth, even in myths. These supposed solutions were never perfect. Despite the allure of a panacea, the complexity of diseases, the inevitability of aging, genetic diversity, and the emergence of new illnesses make such a treatment unattainable. However, that doesn't mean we should abandon hope. While there may not be a single cure for everything, that doesn't mean every disease is without a cure. There are an estimated 10,000 diseases, yet only 500 known cures. But every day, significant advances in medicine bring us closer to bridging this gap. CRISPR alone could potentially address 8,000 of these diseases. Rather than seeking a one-size-fits-all solution in the form of a magic pill, our focus should shift to developing a wide range of specialized treatments, each tailored to specific needs. In this way, we can better equip ourselves to handle whatever challenges the future of health may bring. A world where these numbers are equal could be within our reach in the not-so-distant future. But how would a world without disease change the worlds of our dreams? That's the question I leave you with. Until next time.